Have you ever wondered about the fierce warriors who once ruled the seas and struck fear into the hearts of their enemies? A time when warriors roamed the seas in long ships, pillaging and plundering their way through Europe. The Vikings, a people shrouded in mystery and legend, have captured the imagination of people for centuries. But what exactly do we know about these Norse seafarers, and how do we separate fact from fiction? Join us as we delve into the fascinating world of Viking history and culture. Alright, let's get started and travel back to where it all began, the start of the Viking Age. We're referring to the late 8th century, and suddenly, these Norse seafarers decide to set sail on their epic journeys. But why? Well, it turns out they were a curious bunch, trading, exploring, or maybe just a bit of restlessness. Who knows? But here's the deal. These Scandinavians weren't content with chilling in their homelands. They wanted to see what the world had to offer. Picture this as the era of epic voyages, as these Vikings rocked the boat and ventured into the unknown. But here's the burning question. What exactly pushed them to become the seafaring legends we know today? Some historians believe that the Vikings were driven by economic necessity. Resources were tight in Scandinavia, and the Vikings had to get creative. Raiding and pillaging seemed like a solid plan to make ends meet. Others suggest that it was a desire for adventure and conquest that motivated them to set sail. Regardless of the motivation, these Vikings wasted no time making a name for themselves. They raided from Ireland to Russia, creating chaos wherever they went. Now, you might think these folks were all about the raiding and pillaging, like brutality on repeat. Right, but hold on, it wasn't all about plundering. Turns out, that was just a snippet of their tale. Most of their time was actually spent in their local stomping grounds, doing some pretty everyday stuff. Imagine this. Between epic voyages and raids, the Vikings were just regular folks back home. These guys were multitaskers. They traded, intermarried, and basically left their mark across Europe. Life in a Viking settlement was quite complicated, tough but rewarding. They farmed, fished, crafted impressive metalwork, and wove textiles that turned heads across Europe. And let's not forget, they were hardcore warriors, known for their bravery and battle skills. It was a wild ride, but hey, that's the Viking Age for you, a mix of chaos, commerce, and craftsmanship. But where and how did these folks live? Well, the Vikings set up camp in the northern nooks of Europe, in places like Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. It was like prime real estate for adventure seekers. Now, their houses weren't exactly skyscrapers. Vikings had these fascinating houses called longhouses, and they were, well, long. Think of these sturdy structures made of wood and thatched roofs, nestled in these tight-knit communities. Inside those houses, all of them lived together. And what does it mean when we say all of them? Well, it includes family members, servants, and even their animals. And it wasn't just about living in. It was about surviving those chilly northern winters. Alright, let's talk about their daily grind time. So, what did a typical day look like for a Viking man, woman, and child? Well, the men were out there doing the heavy lifting, farming, fishing, and of course, gearing up for any potential adventures. Meanwhile, the women were mainly responsible for taking care of household activities. They managed everything from cooking to weaving, and let's not forget raising their children. And let's not forget the little Vikings in training, the kids. Playtime for them wasn't all about wooden swords and mini long ship races. They had their share of chores. Imagine the mini Vikings helping out with farm work, or maybe even taking care of animals. But hold up, it wasn't all about the serious business. Vikings had a non-brutal, fun side too. They had their fair share of celebrations, with feasts, mead, and maybe a bit of storytelling. It's like they had a switch from battle mode to party mode. Now, it's time to discover the Viking menu. And it's not your typical medieval feast. These Norse folks were all about that protein-packed lifestyle. So, what's on the Viking plate? Well, Vikings were big fans of beef, pork, and lamb. Most of the time, they minced on boiled food. But they also loved to smoke and dry their meat, turning it into this epic goodness. For those living near the seas, the Vikings had a seafood staple as well. Herring, cod, and salmon. They caught them fresh and knew how to turn them into savory delights. Now, let's spice things up. Vikings loved their herbs and spices, not just for flavor but also for some health benefits. But hold on, the Viking protein obsession doesn't stop there. Milk, cheese, and butter, all the good stuff. And get this, they even drank whey, the liquid left after making cheese. But here's the kicker. It wasn't just about the meat. Vikings knew how to balance things out. They also had grains, vegetables, and fruits in their diet. Barley and oats were in the mix, and they even brewed their own mead. But did they prepare it? They fermented water and honey along with some yeast. Within the Viking society, religion wasn't just a side note. It was front and center, weaving through their beliefs and values. So, who were the Vikings turning to when they looked for divine guidance? Well, they had a whole pantheon of gods and goddesses, each with their own unique attributes and powers. At the top of the divine hierarchy was Odin, the god associated with wisdom, magic, and the art of war. Then you've got Thor, the thunder god flexing his muscles for strength and protection. And let's not forget Freya, the multitasking goddess of love, fertility, and warfare. Now, the burning question. How did the Vikings get on the gods' good side? They believed in sacrifices to keep divine beings happy and avoid any cosmic troubles. But here's the twist. The Vikings also had this firm belief in fate. They thought their lives were predetermined by the gods, and no amount of sacrifice could change that course. This belief in fate wasn't just a philosophical concept. It was the Viking way of tackling life's challenges. Imagine facing adversity with a determined spirit, knowing that fate had a hand in the game. And then there's the Viking responsibility mantra, skuld. They believed that every action had consequences, good or bad, adding a layer of personal responsibility to their worldview. Now, let's talk about the ultimate journey, death. Vikings saw it not just as the end, but as a transformative experience. According to their belief, the soul journeyed to Valhalla, Odin's Hall of the Slain. And as for their death ritual, imagine this solemn yet powerful scene. The deceased would be laid to rest with items they might need in the afterlife, and sometimes even a ship burial for those Viking captains setting sail into eternity. Alright, let's fast forward to the end of the Viking Age, a time when the Norse saga took an unexpected turn. So, what brought about the grand finale of this seafaring era? Let's rewind a bit and talk about the 11th century. It was the time when the Viking Age was winding down. But why? Was it because they ran out of seas to conquer or foes to face? Well, not exactly. It turns out a mix of factors played a part. As time went on, more and more of them decided to hang up their longship keys and plant their flags on solid ground. Family life, farming, and local politics started taking the spotlight. Then there's the changing global scene. Europe was in for a bit of a shake-up, with new power players on the block. The Vikings had to adapt to a shifting landscape. And of course, there's that infamous event, the Battle of Stamford Bridge in 1066. Ever heard about it? It was like the climax of the Viking Age drama. Harald Hardrada, the last of the great Viking kings, faced off against the English forces, and it didn't end well for him. While the Viking Age as we know it may have wrapped up, their legacy lived on. The Vikings left their mark not just in the history books, but in the cultures and tales that followed. And there you have it, the gripping tale of the end of the Viking Age, unraveling mysteries from the 11th century. If you've enjoyed this journey into history, make sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and give us a thumbs up if you want more deep dives into how they lived. We're your passport to the past, exploring the fascinating lives of those who came before us. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring with how they lived.